Hi kids! Welcome to MaSCIEyang Matuto with Ma'am Rika. So our lesson for today is about science process skills. These science process skills are needed to carry out in any experiment that we will have. There are two classifications of science process skill. One is this basic science process skill and the integrated science process skill. When we say basic science process skill, we mean these skills are simple, fundamental, or important, and it will serve as a foundation in any other process skill. The first basic science process skill is observing. When we observe, we use our 5 senses: sense of hearing, sense of sight, sense of smell, sense of taste, and sense of touch. For example, observe my clothes today or my dress. What is your observation? I wear a peach color today. That is an observation. What sense organ did I use? It's right. It's sense of sight because my eyes were able to see the color of my shirt. We can also use observation tools to observe objects. So we have 1. The microscope. Microscope is used to observe objects which cannot be seen by our naked eye. Next observation tool is the magnifying glass or hand lens. It is used to make smaller things appear bigger. And also, telescope is an observation tool used to observe objects that are far from a distance. There are 2 kinds of observations. We have the qualitative observation and the quantitative observation. When we say qualitative, we refer to the quality. We use our senses and observation tools to describe something or to describe its quality. When we say quantitative observation, we refer to quantity or numbers, and that leads us to our second basic science process skill, which is measuring. The third basic science process skill is classifying. When we classify, we group similar objects among their commonality or objects that share the same characteristics. For example, in your class, we can classify girls from boys. With that, we can easily identify the relationship among other objects for us for a proper and better classification. Fourth basic science process skill is inferring. When we make an inference, we use our past observations. So for example, saying the boy who used a pencil made a mistake because the eraser is all worn out. That is an example of inference. Another example, you saw your friend with a wet umbrella, and your inference would be that friend came from a place where it rained. Fifth basic science process skill is predicting. When we make a prediction, we use our inferences to predict future events using current evidences. For example, your observation is that when you put ice under the sun, it will melt. Your inference would be heat causes the ice to melt. What would be your prediction? The prediction can be when you put ice cream under the sun, it will also melt. And the last basic science process skill is communicating. There are 2 ways to communicate. We have the verbal and the non-verbal. When we say verbal, it could be written or spoken, just like this one. And when we say non-verbal, it could be in a form of pictures, illustrations, graphic organizers, graphs such as pie charts, or bar graphs. So those are the basic science process skills. We have 6: observing, measuring, classifying, inferring, predicting, and communicating. Bye! Now let's go to the other classification of science process skill, which is the integrated science process skill. When we say integrated, it's a combination of two or more basic science process skills. So when we combine these basic science process skills, we make integrated science process skills. First integrated science process skill is formulating a hypothesis. A hypothesis is an educated guess that tentatively explains a certain activity in a certain scenario. We use the if and then phrase to make a hypothesis. So for example, if you will listen today, then you will get a high score in our quiz. Next is identifying variables. Variables are factors that are present in an experiment. We have three kinds of variables. We have the independent variable, or simply the cause, the dependent variable, or simply the effect, and the controlled variable, which are being kept constant in a certain experiment. Next is identifying variables. Variables are factors that are present in an experiment. We have three kinds of variables. We have the independent variable, or simply the cause, the dependent variable, or simply the effect, and the controlled variable, which are being kept constant in a certain experiment. When you're done formulating hypothesis, identifying variable, and defining operationally, you are ready to carry out your experiment. When you perform an experiment, you follow the scientific method wherein it caters a step-by-step process for you to carry out the experiment. Once you're already done with your experiment, you are ready to interpret data or the results of your experiment. So how will you interpret or present your data? It is said that integrated science process skill is a combination of two or more basic science process skill. Now it's your turn to identify those basic science process skill in each integrated science process skill. Can you do it?